Shalom, I'm Officer Jadiel of IUIC, and I'm here to let you know that xenophobia and racism still exist in Turkey, right? Turkey is a lie. They try to perpetuate this idea that there's no xenophobia, no racism in Turkey, and that's what they often push. Just like many of the Arab countries in the Levant region. They try to let you know that, hey, we're not racist, everybody's one. There's not really this problem. There's no problems of like George Floyd or Trayvon Martin here in Turkey, but we're going to examine that today. Let's start at John chapter 8 and verse 32. The book of John chapter 8 and verse 32, and it reads, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." What we got to understand is the truth about what's going on in these regions. Many of our people there are not being portrayed in the correct way. Many of our people there, they don't know their true identity, and they view these lies as real life. Right? They view the lie that Turkey puts out as real life, but what we got to understand is the country is lying to you, the people that have adapted to that lie, and the only thing that's going to make us free in the last days is the truth. We're going to go to Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 15, and it says, "But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee." What God told the children of Israel was if they didn't keep his commandments, that they would be cursed and oppressed as a people. So when you look in Izmir today, you see the descendants of slaves, the Afro Turks. And what's going on with them is they're being oppressed in many different ways. We're going to examine that today. Through the media, right? There's portrayal of them as in racist ways or blackface being portrayed. There's also rape, right? There's also oppression by the police. The same things that are being experienced here in America are also being experienced there in Izmir. And the reason that's happening is because the Afro Turks have broken the commandments of God, and they are the Israelites of the Bible. That's who they truly are. Let's read verse 16. It says, "Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field." I want to dig into the field part because the people there, they were brought there as slaves under the Ottoman Turks. There are about 100,000 people that currently reside in Turkey, known as Afro Turks, or even more, and they're not known as a people. And they were brought there as slaves to work in the field. So the Bible says you would be cursed in the field, and it also says that you would be cursed in the city. First, they were brought there as slaves to pick cotton, to work in the fields, and eventually they are now cursed in the very same cities that they are forced to reside in. Brought there as slaves and never given an opportunity or a way to exit, a way to freedom. Let's read verse 64. Let's see if that would happen according to the Bible. Verse 64 says, "And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone." I'm going to read it one more time. "And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth even unto the other." So the Afro Turks are the Israelites, and they were scattered from one end of the earth unto the other. That's why during the Ottoman Empire, you all were brought there as slaves. That's why the Afro-Turk community exists, because God said you would be scattered all over the earth. That's why all over the earth, the Israelites are waking up. We're starting to learn who we are. But God said it would happen because we did not keep his commandments. Also, he said when you got there, you would serve other gods. So many of you, you've taken on Islam. You've started to say, Islam is my religion. I believe in Muhammad. And that is a lie. The reason that you've taken on Islam is by force. Muhammad, he was avid about everyone falling into his religion. He even killed to force people into that religion. So now you accept it because what? It allows you to fit in. It allows you not to feel like you're being ostracized by society. So you accept the religion. You say, you know what? I'm Muslim. Everybody else is Muslim. Why not? God said that would happen as a curse. That when you got there, that you would serve wood and stone. And that stone is going into the cobblestone that you worship today. Last verse before we get into some material so you can see the history, right? Through some articles, through some videos, right? We're going to dig into a little bit. Let's go Deuteronomy 28, verse 48. It says, "Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee." So the Bible says that you have to serve your enemies for food, water, and clothing. That's why today you've adapted to the mindset that you're an Arab. You've left your Afro-Turk history. You left the fact that you're connected to slavery because it doesn't give you food, water, clothing, right? Those are the things that people need to survive. So you understand that in order to gain a leg up in society, you must identify as Arab. In order to move forward in society, you need to get connected to the dominant society. So you leave your nationality, you leave your heritage. You say it's not something I want to be a part of, and you do that because you understand that your enemies control your food, your water, your clothing, and everything else. You understand where it comes from. So you're forced, in order to be in their mindset, you're forced to adapt to their school system, to their identity of who you are, but you're forced also to be oppressed by them and say nothing, because you know that if not, right, if you were to say something, if you were to rise up, if you were to identify yourself, that you wouldn't be able to eat, that you wouldn't be able to clothe yourselves, that you wouldn't be able to have food, right, or water, right? You understand these things would happen to you as a result of you not accepting the dominant society. So that's why people adapt to that. And what they understood was, once they got us to that point, they could take the yoke of iron off our neck. They understood that now you would walk around and you would call yourself Arab, and you would teach your children to call themselves Arabs, to no longer identify with being the Israelites, to no longer identify with the customs that relate back to this Bible. So we're here to tell you the truth so that you can wake up and remember who you are, and show you that the reason that you're in that position is because you didn't keep the commandments of God, and you were going to be scattered all over the earth. So with that being said, let's jump into the first video. Let's go ahead and play that.
There are no official statistics on the size of the Afro-Turkish population today, though a credible estimate is around 20,000 people. They are largely descended from enslaved Africans brought to Turkey during the Ottoman Empire. The majority are Muslim and live in the region of Izmir on the Aegean coast. There are also several thousand African migrants living in Turkey, who are categorized distinctly from the local Afro-Turkish population. From as early as the 16th century, enslaved Africans were trafficked to West Anatolia from Ethiopia, Niger, Libya, Kenya, and Sudan. During the Ottoman Empire, enslaved Africans largely worked on farms, in cotton fields, and processing tobacco. This explains their modern-day presence on the Aegean coast, where cotton production is high. They were also made eunuchs and janissaries, or elite royal guards, guarding the harem of the royal family. Although they were technically enslaved, black eunuchs in Turkish society were sometimes granted a relatively high amount of political power and authority. The highest position a eunuch could ascend to was the position of Kizlar Aga, who was responsible for guarding the imperial harem of the Ottoman sultans in Constantinople.
So now, watching that video, we can see that our people were faced with much slavery, with much oppression, right? With bondage. We can tell that they were not in positions of power. The highest you could ascend to is basically to watch the king, right? To take care of everything that the king wanted you to take care of. And that is done because God said that you would serve your enemies. That's what he said. When we read Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 48, that was true. Let's read this book, right? It explains some of the history when we were taken into slavery into Africa, right? The title of the book is The Flaming Torch in Darkest Africa by William Taylor Deedy. Now let's go to the next page. It says, the Hebrew nation are at present scattered over the face of the habitable globe. They are numerous in some parts of Asia, particularly the Turkish dominions. Various countries in Africa contain a large number, as Egypt and Ethiopia, and it is computed that there are 400,000 in Morocco, Algiers, and Fez. So the Israelites were scattered. It's known throughout history that the Israelites were scattered and that they dwell in the region of Turkey. They dwell in that region. Why? Give me Deuteronomy 28, verse 64 one more time. It says, and the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from the one end of the earth, even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. So the Lord let you know that this was going to happen. He let you know that we would be scattered as a people. Let's get the next article now. This is modern day Turkey, right? This article was written in August of this year. So Turkey, in their mind, there's no xenophobia, there's no racism. Let's look up xenophobia really quickly. Xenophobia, by definition, is the fear of strangers, right? So now you should see it on the screen. Fear of strangers, right? So now let's jump back. Turkey believes there's no fear of strangers, that they're welcoming, that they're willing to bring anyone in. Interesting. Let's read the article. It says, Turkey says racism, xenophobia, one of greatest threats to social peace. So what they're saying is xenophobia and racism is a problem to humanity, right? They're saying overall in humanity, there's a problem we have with this and we must stop it. Racism and xenophobia are one of the greatest threats to social peace, the Turkish Foreign Ministry said on Tuesday, marking the International Day commemorating the victims of acts of violence based on religion or belief. We respectfully remember all persons who have been victims of heinous acts and attacks in various parts of the world due to their religion or belief, said a ministry statement. What that refers to is not you Afro-Turks. What they're referring to is they're referring to the people who practice Islam who are facing racism all over the world. They don't care about you Afro-Turks because they practice xenophobia and racism on you in the very country of Turkey. Now let's get the wiki page. It says in Turkey, xenophobia and ethnic discrimination are present in its society and throughout its history, including institutional racism against non-Muslims and non-Sunni minorities. So Wikipedia disagrees with the Turkish foreign ministry that xenophobia is being stopped or needs to be stopped. Because wouldn't you think if xenophobia needed to be stopped, Turkey would do it at home first? This is how you know these nations are hypocrites. Why would I go out and say to the world that you need to stop xenophobia and racism, but in my very own backyard, there's a history of it that I have not stopped yet? This is what I'm telling you all. You need to know the truth and you need to wake up that you are the Israelites and that Turkey is not for you. It's not for your benefit. Let's read it again. In Turkey, xenophobia and ethnic discrimination are present in its society and throughout its history, including institutional racism against non-Muslims and non-Sunni minorities. This appears mainly in the form of negative attitudes and actions by some people towards people who are not considered ethnically Turkic, notably Kurds, Armenians, Arabs, Assyrians, Greeks, Jews, and peripatetic groups like Romani people, Domari, Abdals, and Lam. In recent years, racism in Turkey has increased towards other Middle Eastern nationals such as Syrian refugees, Afghan, Pakistani, and African migrants. That was the point. We read all that to get to African migrants because what they are doing against the Afro-Turks is they're facing much racism in the land. They're not being given the same opportunities in the land. They're being looked at as crazy. Their skin color is something to frown upon. These people are being oppressed in the land. Let's read against Africans. It says, a common perception against the Turkish society is that racism against black people in Turkey is not a big issue because the country does not have a history of colonialism or segregation as in many Western countries. Well, that's a lie. The country has a history of bringing people there to pick cotton. How could we say that they don't have a history of colonialism and segregation and they brought a group there to be enslaved? These are the things that they will push you and they'll teach your children in schools in Turkey. On the contrary, socialists such as Dogus Simsik strongly reject this point of view, stressing that this misperception resulted from the fact that Africans in Turkey often lived in the shadows, and Afro-Turks, the historical black population of Turkey, are mostly confined to tiny communities in Western Turkey. They call that the hood here in America, the barrio, the ghetto. That's what they call those places. Our people live in the ghetto in Turkey as well. It says African immigrants, whose numbers were estimated to be 150,000 as of 2018, have reported to experience sexual abuse and discrimination based on racial grounds regularly in Turkey. Let's get to the next article. Although some estimates put the number of Afro-Turks as high as 100,000, the community remains relatively unknown. So how do you hide 100,000 people? There has to be some hatred in that. There has to be some xenophobia and racism in that to hide 100,000 people from the world. There's people that are watching this video right now that don't know that Afro-Turks exist. Afro-Turks are nominally Muslim, with nothing to differentiate them from most Turks, apart from an evidently different ethnic makeup. But as a prejudiced ethnic minority, they have tried over the generations to integrate as much as possible. After years of suffering, you hide what makes you different, said Orhan sagely. That is why our parents and parents' parents did not teach us their language. They did not want to make us different. They wanted us to only be Turkish. That is what I read, Deuteronomy 28, real quick in verse 48. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things, and he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. We were destroyed as a people so much so that we wanted to adapt to society. So we say, we no longer want our culture, we no longer want our heritage. We're gonna leave all of that alone because being different is what is the reason we're being oppressed. That means that the country of Turkey had a fear of strangers so much so that it oppressed the people into just becoming Turkish. We don't want you to be different. So Turkey, you have to fix your own problems if you truly want to fix things. But what I'm telling you all, you Afro Turks, is that they never will. It says, at the other end of the spectrum was 65-year-old Ahmet Dogu, a retired worker in the former state-owned tobacco factory in Izmir. We just read that they brought people there to be slaves and pick cotton, or we watched it in the video, that they were brought there to pick cotton and to farm tobacco. And now they created a state-owned tobacco factory. Interesting. They took the same people that were slaves and said, you know what? Just go ahead and work in these factories. So that's who Ahmet Dogu is, right? It says, in Izmir and an avid member of the Afro Turk Foundation, Dogu was entirely frank about the discrimination he faced as a black man in Turkey. Whether you like it or not, it does get to you, he said soberly, sitting outside the foundation's one-room office in Izmir's shopping district, describing how mothers on the street mutter superstitious phrases as they pass him with their children. They pray that their children will not turn out so black. Read it again. They pray that their children will not turn out so black, he said, grimacing slightly. They touch wood and look away from me. More insidious, however, is the way Afro Turks are referred to in apparently friendly social circles as Arab, a term which has been traditionally used in Turkey for anyone dark enough to be either Arab or African. We call ourselves Arab too, Ahmet said. It is better than African. So a derogatory term in that region is better than being African. It's better than being the Israelites. It's better than accepting your roots. That's what they've taught the people to do, to look down. That is xenophobia and racism at its core. But how could this place say that we're against xenophobia and racism? We notably call ourselves Arab too, Ahmet said. It is better than African, which has such bad connotations. When people think of Africans, they think of cannibalism and backwardness. We do not want to be associated with that. These days, we also call ourselves Sudanese or Libyan or whatever, even though we don't know exactly where our families are from. The reason you don't know where your families are from is because you've lost your identity. Give me Deuteronomy 28 and verse 37. It says, and now shall become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations whither the Lord shall lead thee. Astonishment is something you're surprised at, but I want to get at a proverb and a byword, specifically a byword. A byword is a name outside of your God-given name. God said that the Afro Turks would become a byword, meaning they would be called Arab. They would be called African, black, because they had lost their true identity. They had lost their heritage. And that was done because you did not keep the commandments of God. In these images, right, you can see here in these images that the racism exists. These are all images of typical racist things you would see in America today. The mammy, right? The savage and his white woman, right? You see the kid with the lighter skinned woman. You also see blackface going on in this image here, right? So you wouldn't even know the difference from China to America. That's because we are the Israelites. Everywhere we are hated. Let me read this real quick. It says, in a public attempt to discuss anti-blackness in Turkey, newspapers in Turkey have interviewed black locals and argued that the country does not have a problem with anti-blackness. This article was done around the time of George Floyd, and what they were trying to examine was, is there actually racism in Turkey? We clearly see that. We read multiple articles and looked at multiple things today that show xenophobia and racism exist in Turkey. But what they want to do is they want to make it so it doesn't exist. They want you to fall back asleep, right? It says, this denial came as no surprise, as it has been repeated by news media and columnists over the years. We love our Arab mammies. We're going to see what an Arab mammy is in a second. I believe this attitude of denial is one of major reasons that a leader like Erdogan can publicly condemn anti-blackness and police violence in the US. The simple belief that anti-blackness and racism are not Turkey's problems. So they condemn what's going on in the US as if they're different, not realizing the Afro Turks live exactly how we live here in the US. There's no difference, but that's what they want you to believe. They want you to believe that you're separated from your people all around the world. And what we're trying to tell you is wake up. We're the Israelites and we must unite in these last days. It says the Arab mammy and the issue with blackfacing. Assigning black women household duties was a common practice in Ottoman Turkey. This practice continued until Ottoman Turkey's late attempt at abolishing slavery at the end of the 1890s. Connected to this history of slavery in Ottoman Turkey, the Arab mammy stereotype was one of the early representations of black women during the era. Arab mammies were usually depicted as older, religious, overweight women with a heavy accent. Aunt Jemima. That's what it was. It was happening in the U.S. and it was also happening in Turkey. They were showing you in your face that you are not like us. We're against you. And they say we love our Arab mammies. That is derogatory. That is racist. That is xenophobia at its core. It says Arab mammies were usually depicted as older, religious, overweight women with a heavy accent, always in a supportive role as caregivers for wealthy Turkish families. So they portrayed you in the media as slaves. That was done intentionally. All right, we're gonna drop this. We're gonna go back to the scriptures, right? Hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked, from the insurrection of the workers of iniquity, who whet their tongue like a sword, and who bent their bows to shoot their arrows, even bitter words. The wicked has lied about who our people are, and the goal of them is to hide our people's identity in this last days. They have secret councils. What they do is they sit down and they say, how can we keep the Afro Turks from finding out their identity? That's being done in Turkey, that's being done in America, that's being done all around the earth. And what we got to do as a people is realize there's a people against us. There's a people who is intentionally trying to keep us in sin, to keep us in a mindset of we are nothing and all we are is the bottom of society. But in the last days, we got to find out that we're the Israelites. That's what God has sent his prophets out to let our people know. It's time to wake up. It's time to repent. Let's keep reading. It says that they may shoot in secret at the perfect. Suddenly do they shoot at him and fear not. They encourage themselves in an evil matter privily. Evil matter. They commune of laying snares privily. They say, who shall see them? So that mindset is nobody sees us. If we can push that xenophobia and racism does not exist in Turkey, no one will ever look at Turkey to identify xenophobia and racism. It's all being done intentionally. But what you Afro Turks have to wake up and see is that this nation is not for you. It is not a place that you're going to be able to thrive and overcome, especially with all the turmoil going on in the region right now. It's time for you to wake up and unite and understand who you are. You are the Israelites according to the Bible. God said these curses will come upon you and that there would be nations against you that would come against you and try to oppress you, try to take your nationality away and keep you in that state. All right, we're going to go to Leviticus chapter 26 and read verse 14 real quick. It's the book of Leviticus chapter 26 and verse 14. And it says, but if you will not hearken unto me and will not do all these commandments, and if ye shall despise my statutes, or if your soul abhor my judgments, so that ye will not do all my commandments, but that ye break my covenant. That's what we've done as a people. We've broken the agreement that we made with God. He told us that we were supposed to keep laws. We didn't keep those laws. We have broken those laws. And so God said, as a result of breaking those laws, this is what will happen. He says, I will also do this unto you. I will even appoint over you terror, consumption, and the burning egg, that shall consume the eyes and cause sorrow of heart. And ye shall sow your seed in vain, for your enemies shall eat it. That's what happened when you all were working in the cotton fields and you were working with tobacco. You were sowing your seed and your enemies were eating it. You were farming and your enemies were taking it from you. God said he will put terror over you. It's terrible for you to walk outside and say, I don't like being black. That is xenophobia and racism. That is fear of strangers. Turkey never wanted you to be like them. They brought you there to stay on the bottom of society. Verse 17 proves that. It says, and I will set my face against you, and ye shall be slain before your enemies. They that hate you shall reign over you, and ye shall flee when none pursueth you. And that's the point you need to see, you Afro Turks. You need to wake up and understand that by breaking God's commandments, God said I would set a nation over you that hate you. And in these last days, we got to understand xenophobia and racism, they exist in Turkey. That is a lie that they're trying to push to you, that these things don't exist, that there's no racism here. Everybody go along to get along, but we got to wake up. It's time for you to come back and repent and be the Israelites. It's the book of Zephaniah chapter 2 and verse 1. It says, gather yourselves together, yea, gather together, O nation not desired. So you Afro Turks, you are a nation not desired. You are people that are hated all around the earth because we are the Israelites. And by breaking God's commandments, he said he would set a nation over us who hates us. So in the last days, he's commanded us to gather ourselves together. It says, before the decree bring forth, before the day pass as a chaff, before the face anger of the Lord come upon you, before the day of the Lord's anger come upon you. This is going into the destruction that's going to come on the earth. World War III. God said before World War III comes, you Afro Turks must gather together and repent as the Israelites. Verse 3, it says, seek ye the Lord, all ye meek of the earth, which have wrought his judgment. Seek righteousness, seek meekness. It may be ye shall be hid in the day of the Lord's anger. In the day of the Lord's judgment, you all have been meek, right? You all have sat on the bottom of society. You've accepted scepter your role. But now it's time for us to rise up and keep the laws of God. If we seek the Lord first, the Lord will deliver us. The Lord will be the one who sets us free from the captivity that we face. That's why we got to know this truth. That's why we got to come together as the people of the book in these last days. Verse 4 says, for Gaza shall be forsaken. That region that you're in, Gaza is going to be destroyed. And it says, and Ashkelon, a desolation. The Gaza Strip, Ashkelon and Israel, those places are going to be destroyed. It's Bible prophecy. So before that time, we must rise up and keep the commandments and come back together. And it says, they shall drive out Ashdod at the noonday, and Ekron shall be rooted up. So all the region of Gaza and Israel is going to be destroyed according to the Bible. But where are you going to be in those times? The Bible said we must come together. We must be seeking righteousness and seeking meekness as the Israelites. That's what the Lord wants for you in these last days. So I pray you learn something. If you'd like to learn more, visit us at israelunite.org. Shalom.